It feels so empowering to have a conversation with someone responsible for contributing to a movement. A global movement where teenagers turn into leaders and change makers. One such person is Devi Dang, the Vice President of Girl Up Bombay. Girl Up is an initiative of the UN Foundation and has 4,500 clubs in nearly 125 countries and all 50 US states. Girl Up Bombay is striving towards achieving gender equality in our community through volunteering, fundraising, and spreading awareness about issues like gender-based violence, period poverty, gender inequalities in STEM, and using STEM skills for social good. Join two teenagers having a conversation about how our actions can inspire social change and gender equality. If someone's told you you're too young to do anything, watch this episode and show it to them. Hi, Devi. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm really excited to be here. I'm doing good.
So, first of all, I just saw your play and tell us a little bit about it. Mirror, Mirror on the Wall. Love to know.
Yeah, so Bombay Theatre Company is a theatre company that called out for productions, and under its production, the Writers Act. And in that, they wanted a writer and an actor to collaborate to create a 3 to 5 minute performance. So me and my theatre buddy from my university, we used to do theatre together. So we decided to submit an entry. So I wrote and directed the play. It's called Mirror, Mirror on the Wall. And she performed in it. When we submitted the entry, we didn't think it would make it, but we got selected out of 53 entries, and only 10 were selected. So that was a huge deal for us.
Wow.
Because we both studied theater at university, and when you study theater, you hear a lot of things, especially after the pandemic, that how are you going to do theater now? It's not live, and everybody is kind of critical of digital theater, like, is it even legit? But for me, I really liked the idea of digital theater because I think it's something that opens up new avenues where with just a screen and some lights, you can do so much.
Right.
And so I think it really expands what we think of as live and as theater. I mean, even lives doing something that's live streamed can be theater, even if it's not in a physical space.
100%.
And it is a contested view. Like, not a lot of people are happy with not doing theater physically, but I think it really opens up new avenues. So for Mirror, Mirror on the Wall was really special when it came out. It's there on Bombay Theatre Company's Instagram page.
Right.
And that play was really inspired by my own stance and my own story, because a lot of people since middle school have spoken to me about how I have a lot of hair on my arms, on every part of my body, and there's always free comments about how I should shave my hair or wax it. I mean, and I did try it and I hated it because it pains so much.
I know, right?
And I'm just like, I was thinking about it one day, and I was like, let's say in 9th, 10th grade, and I really didn't want to do this. But when I didn't wax or when I didn't shave, I was constantly judged, or I was commented on by my relatives, by my friends, like, why don't you do it? And it really irritated me a lot. And this play is really coming from that frustration of having to conform, because if I like sometimes, I asked my relatives, like, on their face, I was like, what if I was a guy and I didn't shave? And they were like, no, then it would be a different thing. And I've heard them say that blatantly to my face. And it really bothered me. So that's what I tried to put into that play, about the frustrations and the kind of things you go through when you're told, like, oh, upper lips kara le. And especially if you go to the parlor, the didi will want you to do everything.
Typical parlor wali auntie.
Yeah, and I mean, I've had these experiences. This is not coming from just imagination. It is coming from my lived reality. And so I just wanted to portray that and talk about beauty standards with regards to body hair, because I think it's something we just take for granted and we just don't talk. I mean, we just don't talk about it. And people who choose to do it, that's their personal choice. But those who don't, it's like you try to force it on them.
Right.
And that is not okay, you know.
Yeah.
I don't care if you wax or not, but you don't tell me if I
Right.
should do the same.
Who are you
Yeah.
to tell me? Exactly. You live life by your own terms. 100% agree.
Exactly. And that, you know, that really takes on your self-confidence also, because after a point, if you've been told enough, and I go look in the mirror, I'm gonna see those things as flaws because
it is
I've been
partial
told
conditioning. You've been told
Yeah.
that again and again, that like you have to
Exactly.
look a certain way and behave in a certain way, and then you're like, do I really have to? You start questioning yourself.
Exactly. And even like a person like me who has a very strong stance against like what I want to do with my body hair, even I sometimes I just feel like, oh, should I do it? Kyuki everyone's saying it so much, right? And I also slip because after a point it also gets to your head. It's very difficult for
Right.
it to not. I mean, no matter how strong and no matter how much you try to like fight it, it'll
100%.
somewhere or the other it'll come to you, you know, when you take pictures or something, and you know it comes to you a lot. So it's something that we should talk about. So that's what I tried to put in that play.
So since you've just gone down this path, if anyone's watching and they want to, you know, get into a similar kind of a direction, what would you tell them to go for it? What have you learned along your way?
So I think what I've learned is that it's very important to follow your passion in the performing arts, but it's also to remember it's also important to remember that it doesn't pay. And it's been only like not even a year since I've graduated from university, but it's a fact of life that for the performing arts, especially in India, don't pay. Okay.
Right.
And it's really important for a performing artist to remember that. So at university, for example, I majored in literary and cultural studies so that I have a basis that kind of supports theater for me, but also it provides me with another avenue to explore and kind of get that job into. I mean, it's very difficult to make a living in theater in India. And even if you go abroad, it is much better, like no doubt, but not everybody can afford it and not everybody wants to. Right. So it's very important as a performing artist to also remember it doesn't pay as much. So you need to have other avenues open that can be a source of your income. And you need to be really good at financial literacy. Like you need to have that in order to balance your income so that when you perform or when you do the things you love, you're free and you don't have any restrictions over there.
Right.
100%. So yeah, that's what I've kind of learned. But I've also learned that some people, like, they drop their passion for income, but for me, I have realized that that doesn't work for me. I'd rather do it and side by side also do something else that does give me a stable income. But to leave it fully, I think is something you do.
You're disrespecting like what you stand
yourself
for.
Yeah, exactly. And it also hurts personally. Like, I don't think I would be as happy if I completely left theater, you know, even if a little small, like just a hint of it also, if I have it in my life, I'll be really happy. So yeah,
100% agree. And it was very well put, like the way you said it was beautiful. Okay, so Devi Dang is the Vice President of Girl Up Bombay. So first, how did Girl Up Bombay come into being? We want to know.
So Girl Up Bombay, actually, I did not, it was not my creation. Girl Up initially is an initiative by the United Nations Foundation. And they started this global initiative so that they can promote gender equality throughout the globe.
Right.
And one of the chapters of that is Girl Up Bombay. And it's a Bombay-based club. It's fully volunteer-based, and it was started by Bhargavi Patil, who is also our president. And she started it in the pandemic, and I joined, I think, a few months later when she started the call out for volunteers. That's when I joined Girl Up Bombay. And the reason I decided to join it is because in 2020, the Girl Up Leadership Summit, that happened online. So that means anybody could access it. You didn't have to go there physically. Right. And a friend of mine just posted a story that, oh, Michelle Obama speaking and Priyanka Chopra speaking and all. So I was like, you know what, let's try it out. And I went to the summit, and at that time, I was actually at my rock bottom in terms of mental health. Like it was really bad for me. And I needed some sort of, I was looking for some sort of hope or light to just latch on to.
Right.
And when I went to the Girl Up Summit, I found that, because at the summit, I met so many different people who were so passionate about creating a kind world, about creating a gender equal world. And it felt like a global community that was there to help each other and support each other, and was really happy to be together, and also wanted to share the concerns of each other so that they can help each other in this journey.
Okay.
And it felt so beautiful because, you know, you're not really exposed to a global audience in like in everyday life. You only
Right.
meet people who live around you, or you know, or the friends you know. But to meet random people from across the globe who are
Right.
also attending this summit that they're excited about, I think that gave me a sense of belonging, that oh, there's other people, and there's so many other women as well who are dealing in similar situations,
Right.
but in different parts of the world. And they're really there to support you if you need them. And that's when I realized, okay, I want to be a part of this Girl Up community. So I went to the community website, I started looking for clubs around me, and I found Girl Up Bombay. And Bhargavi had just created it like a few months back. And then I joined it, and I think that's the best decision of my life, because I found a group of people that I can trust, and we still haven't met physically. None of us, like only a very few of us have met physically. Like me and Bhargavi, for example, we haven't met ever. And it's insane, but we are so close, and we're such good friends now after 1.5 years, but we still haven't met. So that's the kind of community, I mean, we have created where everybody comes together to support each other and also create a positive change as much as we can in the community.
And how has it changed you as a person, being a part of Girl Up?
Oh my God, a lot. Because when you are part of a community that is so strong and is working towards a common goal, you find a place where you belong. And when you feel like you are making some change in society, no matter how small, that gives you a kind of confidence and a kind of boost in self-esteem. You know, I do belong somewhere. I am doing something that is gonna make an impact in how much ever a capacity, you know, as possible. Like, for example, one of our events was doing a webinar for underprivileged girls, because this was during the lockdown. We could not do a physical event. So we partnered up with an organization that made sure they had phones, and we also did a smartphone donation drive before, so that we could give smartphones to those children who don't have it, and then they access the webinar from there.
That's lovely.
And in the webinar, we it was mainly about career counseling. It was about we had a person from the STEM field, an Indian woman who is pursuing STEM currently, and we had all these people who could motivate the kids, who are mostly girls. And that webinar was so amazing because the children were interacting with them. The career counselor was taking individual examples, guiding them. We gave them options about scholarships, and so many different things were shared. And that really made me feel, okay, even if we're digital, there is an impact we can make. And you know,
100%.
After they left, I mean, the guests, they left, and we were just talking to the children. They felt so motivated, and they literally told us that it was so, like, it was amazing, and they did get so much out of it, and they learned so much, and they had lots of fun. So that, you know, that kind of stuff, it really gets to you.
It stays with you.
Yeah, of course, it stays with you, and it tells you, okay, jitna bhi chota impact hai, at least it's there.
It's there. I resonate a lot with you on this, because with this whole podcast as well, so, you know, bringing out these stories, people listening, people interacting and learning from them. It's kind of my way. When I go to sleep, I feel like, okay, I've done something. It's not big, but it's something. So it's like, feels very liberating and empowering at the same time.
Yep, 100%.
Okay. So looking at the current situation from your vantage point, what do you think the scenario of women is? Is it getting better in our country and worldwide, since you've spoken at the global summit as well?
That's a tough question. That's like saying, will we end up in a utopia or a dystopia? um, I don't know where we'll end up, but I think we're going in both ways. It's weird how we as a global community have managed this, but we are going both ways. Some places we see it deteriorating, and I don't need to say where, and I don't need to say because we know where we live it.
Right.
But also there's women who are coming in leadership roles. They are coming out in the workforce. They are going out on the streets and they're claiming it. But it can go either way, to be honest, but I wouldn't say that it's not changing. It is. Obviously we have a long way to go, and in some places it's going the other way. But I think what we have to understand is that women, or as a group, or all the genders, they are not homogeneous. They are not one kind of people. Like, they have people from different, for example, let's take the example of women. Okay, women is not an homogeneous group, because there's women of different classes, there's women of different castes, there's women of different races, of different nationalities. Everybody comes from a different personal background. So we can't say that the state of gender equality or women empowerment will go in a certain way, because everybody is experiencing it differently. The way I am experiencing it is different from the way you are experiencing it. And it's definitely different from a way that other people, even within India or within just a small radius, are experiencing it. 100%. And that comes from their personal experiences. And it has a lot to do with where you are born and brought up, what are the conditions around you. All of that makes a lot of difference. And I feel because of that diversity in this entire movement of sorts, it's very difficult to pinpoint ki ye acha ja raha hai or this is not going well, because it might be going well for some people who have now gotten the opportunity to work and get educated, but there's also other people who are not going to get those opportunities because of various other reasons. And it's very difficult to say that, especially coming from a place of privilege, because even though I'm a woman, I am more privileged than a lot of other people. And so to say ki nahi, we are going in a good place because I got educated, that's not going to work, because I know a lot of people who didn't get educated. So it's very difficult to answer that question, because it's not homogeneous. If it's going well for some people, it's not going to go well for some people, because to be honest, we're not there. We're way far behind. I mean, still feminism is contested, and it's not fully understood. Sometimes it's misunderstood. It's a very difficult territory, because feminism can't be defined in one line or one word, right? It's a movement that has years and years of history, global history, but also within India, it has a huge history. So to really understand it and to really implement it in our lives is very difficult, because going back to the same point, conditioning. We have been so conditioned in a certain way that to even understand a different point of view, even if you don't agree with it, to understand it only takes so much time. And then to decipher where you stand, it's a very difficult journey, and not a lot of people are willing to take that journey. And it's very important for us and all of us to take that journey to learn and understand and implement in our lives. Like the fact that we have gotten till here at this stage is also because people learned, they unlearned, they changed. I mean, if you see from my dad's era, like a lot of the decisions and a lot of things during his time, they were very different. I mean, not sending
a lot of perspective changes.
Like they didn't send their sisters to, let's say, a metropolitan city alone to study because it's unsafe, or nahi jaati like ladkiyan and all. But now today I can go to a different city to get educated, because there's unlearning that my father had to do or his generation had to do. So we have to be willing to take that step, to learn, to understand, and then to unlearn and relearn. It's like a full process. and it's a never ending process. You can't say ki bhai today I know everything about this movement. That's not
can never
possible,
say
because
that,
it's
right?
evolving. Yeah, it's evolving, it's continuously changing, and you have to move with it. You have to be with your times. You have to change and think about where you stand with regards to it as well.
So since you spoke about feminism and not having understood it correctly, because you can't define it in a line, but now there's this whole concept of pseudo-feminism. So if you could throw a little light on it and how different it is as compared to feminism.
Yeah, see, again, that's a really, I would say, dicey territory, because it's like we haven't fully understood feminism, and then we think about what is pseudo in that.
Right.
And this whole conversation, it cannot be fully expanded upon in this podcast, because it's such a vast conversation. It is, I think the point I'm trying to make here is that the answer is probably not the point. The point is to have that nuance and reflection in your conversation, because if the conversation is blatantly black and white कि ये feminism है, ये pseudo feminism है, this is this, if you make it black and white, then you're not going to end up anywhere, because it is not black and white. There is so much gray which can only be expanded upon if our conversation become nuanced, if they focus on details, if they come from research and historical facts. That's the kind of thing. I think the thing, even because of social media, when you want less words and you want to express things really quickly, what happens is that nuance from the conversation goes. And the moment the nuance is exited the conversation, it is just going to be a fight about black and white, wrong and right. And that's not gonna end up, get us anywhere. There has to be nuance where you understand the details, you are willing to understand the other perspective, even if it's different from yours. And you're willing to have a conversation that respects one another. And then you kind of understand and unfold from there. Our conversations, especially on social media, are missing that nuance, that focus on detail, that focus on sources. Where is your research coming from? Who did you hear this fact from? How detailed was the research? I mean, the reason I guess academia has these questions is because they want to focus on those kind of details. So I guess we have to bring that also a little bit in our mainstream conversations, because that detail gets lost oftentimes. So I think we have to focus on that now.
Right. And since you brought about the point of social media, it's a great tool when it comes to accelerating movements like the Me Too movement. But then at the same time, there's so much of misinformation which is just flooded. And like if one person says it, the other will say it, 10 others will say it, 20 others will say it. And that's how it goes. And then when you narrow down to the root, where is the validity? Where is the verification? So that's a very sad part of it, I would say, because it's empowering at the same time, but at the same time, it's also like, what is your base? Is it verified?
Yeah, social media is it's a tricky space, because like on one hand, anybody can say anything. It's a very open medium. But also we know for a fact that it's filtered and it has its biases, and we can't ignore that fully. And I think it is, in terms of reach, it does promote movements a lot. It does promote a kind of news, but that can go either ways, because it is also your search or your social media also only shows you the searches you do or stuff you want to see. So then it becomes difficult, because is it really showing you diverse information when it's based on your search history and the things you like? There's a weird, social media has a weird skew, and you really have to dig deep to see, are you really seeing diverse information? 100%. Are you really seeing valid and trusted sources? Because anybody can come and make a page, but where is that information coming from? Again, what is the source? How in-depth was the research? Who are the people who are writing this news? Who are the people who have funded this news? All of these things really make a difference in terms of is it, how biased is it, and to which side the news is going, and
100%.
how much of a reality or truth is there really is. Because truth again now is just like, you can't have a statement that you feel. And see, that's why data becomes really important, right? Because data brings to us some kind of numbers or some kind of things that can help us analyze the situation, look at the reality.
Right. So since you spoke about this, you all have a social media page, right? Have you all had instances of people just trolling or, just sending hate comments or not knowing what they're sending, but they just comment or send in DMs or something? Have you all had instances like that?
Yeah, we have had that. And I think it was because we also know the limitations of social media. So as much as we can, we try and give our sources or give links for further information, because we also know that in that 10-slide post we can't cover everything. So what we try to do is we try to give the most relevant information the most concise way, but we also give our sources in the end. And we also sometimes give further readings or resources that can be used. And when we did that, especially I think for the STEM, when we wrote the series about STEM, and there were a few topics, to be honest, even I didn't know before the team brought it up. And for example, gender bias and artificial intelligence, it's still a contested topic, but we decided to take sources from UNESCO, and we use those kind of sources, but we still did get a lot of backlash and different opinions from people on that. And and I think it did bother us, but also, I mean, it is a space where everyone is going to bring their opinions,
right.
Yeah, which I'm like, okay, you can do that, but I think the best thing you can do is to give your sources and to give further reading, which we try to do. And it's not like all the comments are hateful as such. Some of the comments also pointed out our mistakes and we corrected them. And I think that's where, as a social media page, you have to be humble and
constructive criticism, right?
Yeah, you should be willing to accept that, because when we did get critiqued in some things, we made those changes, we edited those posts, we posted about it, that this is what we wrote and we understand now it's better. But there's a way, I mean, there's people who politely wrote to us about our genuine mistakes, and we did genuinely correct them, and we thanked them that thank you for being a part of this conversation. But I guess there's just a way in which you can
it's the approach, right?
Yeah, and I think that's not just a thing with our page, it's a thing with every page on every social media account.
Yes.
There's if you put it in a respectful way, there's still a room to improve and think about things. But that's when you're willing to engage in a respectful, humble conversation, and not on a troll kind of
way,
and
I'm right, you're wrong. No superiority complex.
And especially when you are citing your sources and you are trying to give reliable information and that is contested, it becomes really difficult after a point, because you have provided the source and it's not just something you've made up from the air. So but I think it's okay. It's a part and parcel of
your journey, right?
Everything.
100%.
And we know from historically how many people who pushed against any kind of hegemonic force have seen that kind of a backlash, right? Feminism is just one movement. There is so many other movements that are trying to promote a certain community and try to talk about their discrimination with them, and everybody faces different kinds of backlash from it. It's not ideal. It's not the utopia. But I think if it weren't for those movements, for those people who try to make conversation, we wouldn't be here today. So I think it's our historical baggage and sort of our job to continue that in a way, because we want our future generations to experience a better world, a freer world, a more equal world, not the other way around.
100% agree. Yeah. And since you spoke about gender bias in science and technology, do you have any idols in that field?
I think recently we even talked about this at the summit, and a lot of in the COVID situation, a lot of women sort of took the limelight and they worked really hard in this area. Like there was Kathleen Carrico who made the mRNA vaccines possible. There was Sarah Gilbert. There is Dr. K. Sumathi who was in the research and development wing of Bharat Biotech. And so there's these different women who are now coming, like who have always been a part of very important part of STEM, but now we know about them, and now the word is being spread about them. So I think especially with COVID, we know STEM has become a really important field, and we see women who are coming in it. Actually, if Bhargavi was here, that would be great, because she wants to pursue STEM and she is really passionate about that. Yeah.
Wow.
So if she would hear, she would probably go on and on about that. But it's very important because globally, women in STEM are relatively lower. And I think it's important that we think of science as a very objective sort of a thing, but we know that it doesn't lack bias. And so it's better that in every field, it's important to have diversity in terms of gender, race, and everything, to bring different perspectives and to have different approaches as well.
Agreed. So could you tell us a little bit about the STEM Bala project that you had, since you just spoke about it?
Yeah, so STEM Bala is another organization, and we collaborated with them on a project where, as I said earlier, the webinar for the underprivileged girls. So that was a part of the collaboration with STEM Bala. We also featured their stories, like the stories of the girls who study at STEM Bala. We featured their stories on our social media page. Because Girl Up has 4 components. It has fundraising, storytelling, advocacy. And so all of these things, so we, because we kind of came in the pandemic and we started off, so it was very difficult to do any offline events. So I think a lot of our focus has been on the storytelling aspect of it. And so we thought that, these girls, STEM Bala is doing such an effort to teach these girls STEM and give them STEM education. And so it's important for us to feature their stories and expand their stories. It's kind of like what you do with the podcast. Like you invite people who you want their stories to be featured to the world. That's what we kind of wanted. So we put out their stories and their journey, and we spoke to them, and we put their stories on our social media page. So overall, I think throughout these years, 1.5 years, our focus has been a lot on storytelling and putting those stories out there. I mean, even recently we released the first issue of our e-zine, and that was focused on pride, and we featured their stories. And so our entire, what we try to do mostly have been to put these stories out there, along with obviously fundraising, and we had those other aspects as well. But I think our focus largely has been on storytelling. That's why even we're very happy to say that we also won the storytelling
award. I was just going to bring that up.
At the Girl Up Leadership Summit, which was a great honor for us, because in our first year itself, we were honored with this award. And that really, it really boosts your confidence.
100%.
Because sometimes storytelling can be seen as something that's not really doing enough or not creating as much as an impact. But also as an artist, I know that storytelling has a lot of impact. I'm pretty sure you would also vouch for that.
So I've read about this quote, which is very beautiful. So the world is not made up of atoms, it's made up of stories. So it's like a philosophical aspect to it, which really resonated with me, because bringing out these stories, and as you said, that whole cycle of unlearning, learning, growing and evolving, it's continuous, right? And it's these stories that propel that movement, I would say. So
100%.
I really like the aspect of storytelling of Girl Up. It's good for even the person who's saying the story to see that, okay, I've been featured, and this is me, and I have that representation, which is very empowering.
And stories are so such a beautiful tool. And I don't just say this as a part of Girl Up, but as an artist, as a storyteller. And it really, I mean, the kind of emotional impact you can have on people, it'll be the same facts, the same data, but the way you present it as a lived reality, that really, it really has an impact like nothing else.
Right. It is irreplaceable.
Yeah. Speaking of stories, I will also be telling a story some later this week. If you don't know, THESPO is a theater movement and it's an organization, and they had this thing called THESPO Tapri, where they called for solo performances where you had to tell a story of 3 to 5 minutes. And mine did get selected, fortunately, in that. And so I'm performing on the 24th of September. The tickets are already out. It's a show with 5 performances on 24th and other 4 performances on 25th. So you can buy the ticket for both. My performance will happen on the 24th. And I'm really excited about this story because it's a story that I have written and I am directing it and I'm performing it.
Wow.
Yeah. It'll be live streamed, so it'll be in real time. So as close to theater as we can get with the digital platform. And I really think that story that I'm telling is important. And the story everybody else, like 4 of my other storytellers are telling, also really important, because my story specifically is about time. And it's about my relationship with time and how it moves fast, it moves slow, and what time really means to us and what it does to us.
Super excited.
Yeah, definitely come watch. And there's 4 other beautiful performers along with me on the 24th. And there's 4 other beautiful performances on the 25th. So please come and watch. You can buy your tickets. It's happening on Insider. So
we'll attach the link below in the description.
Definitely do that. Yeah.
No, super excited. And it's good to see people like you taking up unconventional careers like this. Like usually a person would not tread down this path, but it's good to see you and like, you're doing well. So more power to you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. So another question that we had is, supposing you have a conversation with someone and they just say that feminism is a fad, this, that, and it like, kind of triggers you. Would you want to have a conversation with them where you would explain the exact thing to them and make them understand, or for the sake of your own mental health, ignore it? So it's just like a personal question.
It has gotten both ways with me. I've experienced both scenarios. I think it's good to have a conversation when the other person is willing to have a conversation.
Right.
Like a lot of times with my family or like even with my friends, they have a genuine question and they have a genuine opinion and they want to also hear your opinion. It's not like they are just here to serve you this thing and leave.
Right.
They genuinely want to engage in a conversation. So then I engage, and it can get heated up, but eventually it helps bring in a conversation, bring in a perspective, and it's sort of like a thing where you engage with each other, Right. So that's one scenario where I would engage. There's another scenario where it's just the person's just trying to impart their opinion and does not want to hear you. In that situation, I would really examine how up for it I am. Like I would think, do I have headspace to do this? And I think initially when I was younger, I would be very quick to unleash. Like I would be really quick to talk it out and like fight with them and get into these like angry debate kind of things. I think over time I have realized you have to pick your battles. It's very important to pick your battles and go accordingly. So sometimes in that situation I may not, but sometimes I may. I mean, it also depends. Like sometimes it's not a conversation, they are just talking normally and they will say something that I don't feel comfortable with.
Right.
So I will point it out. I mean, initially it was very difficult to do that, especially in a scenario like if it's your relatives. Even if I wanted, I've usually been this person who has said it, and I don't really care what the other person thinks or what is happening in the family scenario. I will say it, but sometimes I had to pause myself because family situation hai, ye hai, wo hai.
Right.
But now I think over time I've realized it's good to call out. And now I think even like my parents, they've also understood ki, she is not wrong, or she is not saying it in a bad way. She really genuinely means it.
It's coming
So
out
now,
from a place of like proper verified knowledge.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, so that's when I call out my uncles and aunts and whoever. Like they, if like let's say they come to my house, and they'll probably like the woman will probably go into the kitchen and try to help out, and then the dudes will just sit there and chill. And
Child
so
out.
I do call that out,
Right.
and I have had weird reactions. Like sometimes they just laughed it off. Sometimes they engaged in a conversation with me. So I think it's good to at least point it out, because if you don't point it out, it's going to continue. You have to at least say ki I am not comfortable with it. They may not change, but at least you have to you have to stand your guard and be like, nay, this is not okay. Okay? And then there's the last scenario where my mental health is down the drain and I don't have the energy or mind space, because you have to also be very wary of that. And as a person who has gone through and is still going through a lot of mental health concerns, I know it is very important to protect. Like it's very important to think about yourself first. And so agar wo nahi ho raha hai, to it's okay to leave that conversation, because only if you're re-energized can you pick a battle where you actually have the energy to converse and talk about it. Agar tumhe energy nahi, you don't have yourself there, it will be very difficult for you to anyways engage in a conversation. And so I think where you feel your mental health is being impacted, it's better to, it's okay. It doesn't, because you don't have to put the world, and this has been a problem with me, ki full world ka weight you don't have to put on yourself. And it's very difficult.
I know.
It's the most difficult thing ever, because no matter where you stand, like what's your stance, that also doesn't matter. All of us feel this weight ki I stand, I have the burden of the world and I have to fix this according to my opinion. But I have to learn, like, I mean, it was really difficult, but you have to learn and unlearn, right? So I had to learn to be like, okay, nahi, it's okay. Like you have to also understand that there's only so much you can take. You are one person. And you have your own things to look after as well. That's very important. And even at the Girl Up Summit, I think when I was on the panel, this was a really cause of concern that activists have a lot of mental health challenges sometimes, because they become so consumed by it's very easy to become so consumed by the movement that you forget to take care of yourself. And that is a topic of concern, and we have to address it. And mental health is something that I am very passionate about, because when I'm going through it, I understand how much it can take a toll on you. So it is a very important topic. I think we need to speak more about it. And oftentimes mental health is seen in isolation, but it's not an isolated topic. Mental health intersects with things like gender, with things like discrimination, with things like, not being unequal. Everything, it is connected. Like a lot of my mental health concerns were related to and connected to gender, because there is some things that, for example, let's say, if you have been told so much, let's say come back to the body hair part, and you have been told so much to remove it, you will get conscious. And when that happens, your self-esteem will get affected, and it's very easy to self-doubt, lose your self-confidence, right? So that impacts your mental health, and it may not be the same way in which another person is impacted, because they did not get to hear these things. So it is not as if mental health stands in isolation. It has connections. And like example, a boy who has been told not to be feminine has so much pressure to be masculine that in a way could impact his mental health as well. So it is something that we have to acknowledge, that mental health is not just an isolated category. It intersects with other parts of your life, and it's there, and it's very important to acknowledge it, understand it.
So you spoke on the mental health panel at the Global Leadership Summit, right?
Yeah.
From a worldwide point of view, what were the problems that were being discussed?
So I think one of the main things was the stigma. I mean, I thought like initially that, maybe some places the stigma is less, but it's everywhere. And we had this section where we interacted with the audience. So many people, like from Morocco, Brazil, they shared how it's still a stigma in their cultures as well. So culturally, a lot of places globally are also facing that stigma problem where mental health is not understood, it's not taken seriously, it's not acknowledged to be a legit thing.
Right.
So it doesn't just happen in our culture, it happens globally. And that's something that I learned at the summit, because so many people came and shared their stories that, we talked to like our parents about it, but they don't understand. And I was like, this is something that kind of happens everywhere.
Right.
The second thing is the facilities in place, the resources in place to tackle mental health challenges, those are missing in a lot of places. It's not just India, but everywhere. I mean, there's the resources to help you with the mental health are really less because it's not really focused on as much. So that is again something that was globally, I mean, people who spoke there, they spoke about it.
Right.
And they talked about how it's a challenge everywhere. And then for people who face mental health concerns to talk about it. And to that is also very difficult.
Acknowledge the fact that you're going through something.
Yeah.
Right.
In public as to tell their stories. And one of the organizations there that came to speak, there was a representative from this organization called This Is My Brave, and they talk about like brave stories of people who went through mental health challenges and how they talk about it, and they bring out their stories, and it's such an act of courage to share what you went through or are going through, because it takes a lot of courage to say that you are not okay, to say that you're going through this, especially when there's so many people out there to judge you about it or to provide their free advice ki ye kar lo, wo kar lo, it's just sirf bahane hai, and there's so much. And one other thing that missing is that your mental health also affects your physical health. Sometimes a person may not realize the symptoms that they're having, but their body starts to show it. For example, if you take my scenario, I used to have a lot of nausea and vomiting and those kind of things. And I always thought it's some physical this thing. But over time, I realized it happens because I'm anxious. And your body shows those symptoms.
Yeah,
and
it's reacting to it, right?
Yeah, if it was not real, I mean, your body would not react. I mean, it's something that because oftentimes these physical symptoms can be mistaken for something else.
Right.
And not realize that they're psychosomatic. So isliye it's very important to see a professional, because only a professional can tell you these things,
Right.
It is very important that when you, let's say you're having some physical problem, you see ki acha hum pehle to test वगैरह कराए, अगर उसमें कुछ नहीं है, then you also go to a mental health professional and talk to them about it, that maybe it is happening because I'm going through something that is not physical. It's
going 100%.
And it's very important, and like it's very difficult even for our generation, but our generation before, because let's say there's someone in my parents' generation that who I have seen is going through something, but they are not willing to show a professional because they are like, nahi, I'm going to go to 10, doctors, like physicians, but I'm not going to go to, but I'm not going to go to a mental health professional. And unko samjhane ke liye you have to have a conversation, because you care about them, right? So you're going to have a conversation with them. So in terms of like your relatives or your close family, it is difficult to call them out on things or point, but it's also difficult to, it's also important to engage in those conversations, because we also want them to be happy and we also want them to get okay, right? But for that, they have to also kind of give into that possibility that maybe it could be that, and this is something I don't know or I haven't been talked to about, but it is something that maybe I can consider.
Right? So I think our generation has been through so much while growing up itself, and we've been exposed also to so much social media that you can get help, these are resources, this, that, and all. So we are very open towards going to see a counselor or a therapist or whatever. And now even schools are becoming more inclusive in the sense that there has to be a therapist mandatory, like it's a must. But as you said, bringing our parents, or are they Gen Y, if I'm not mistaken?
I have no idea, to be honest.
Yeah. So bringing them, getting them to terms with it, that you do need intervention, and like, that's going to heal you internally, which will physically also just help you. So I think that is a big issue, and people are like getting accustomed to being told that, go and like consult a therapist. But then the change is whether they're actually taking that action, or it's just like, okay, theek hai, and then not going. Plus it's also like I saw that y'all have kept a couple of resources for free therapists, or those that charge a little less than the average fees. But so this kind of a thing empowers other people, because not everyone has access, or like, the resources to spend around 1,500 to 2,000 per session, right? It is expensive. So would you say that is a problem that only India has, or then while you were speaking during the summit, was it a worldwide thing with respect to the amount?
Correct. I think it is expensive everywhere. It's not just in India. But I think a lot of organizations are now recognizing that it's expensive and trying to help them. Like I know this organization, it was also started by students. It's called Mind, and they the entire organization is they connect students to therapists who are affordable for them.
Oh wow!
And so that kind of those kind of initiatives that the newer generation is taking is really, I think, helping so that therapy becomes more affordable.
Right.
But also we need to know that maybe it is charged because as a therapist also you have to. It is also about their mental health. We forget that therapists
100%
also,
agree. They are humans.
Yeah, exactly.
They have their own problems.
Exactly, right? So that I think is another thing. But I think I want to go back to the thing you said before about like our generation being more receptive. I think that is there, but also even for us it's very difficult. I mean, I'm like, let's say I can talk about my personal experience. It took me 2 years to accept that I am going through something, and then decide to show someone. Because even though I have always been like, with mental health and be like, no, you have to, you should. But when it came to me personally, it took me
I can
2
understand.
years to, it took me 2 years to accept that I'm going through something. Because it's so difficult to accept that you're not okay. Because you want to feel like, oh, mujhe to koi problem nahi hai. I am so very happy. I have no issues in my life. And that's not, and when you realize that it's not that, it's very difficult to accept that. And then it's very difficult to show someone, because your mind will tell you 50 things. It will tell you ki, how will someone else cure you, or how, not even cure, how will someone else, like, how does someone
truly
else
understand?
How would they know what you're going through? They don't even know you. Like your friend, your best friend, or your mother will probably know you better than them. You have all these, and I also had all these reservations. But when I went there for the first time, I realized I am not the only one in this world who was going through this. And they told me that there's so many other people like you, and so they understood because they are trained professionals. It's like you saying that I have a fever, but how will the doctor know what is my fever? How can they treat my fever because I'm experiencing it and they are not? It's a fever. They will know what to do because they're trained to tackle fever. It's 100%. The same thing, but it takes so much time and really willingness to accept it. And it's very easy for someone to be very rigid about it. Even I have been there. So I know it's very easy to be rigid about it, but I think even in the summit we discussed this. It's better to accept and identify early so that you can treat and heal early. Because I have been in that phase where I didn't identify early. It took me a lot of time. And so by the time I was in such a burnout, and it just made things worse compared to better. So I think important to identify early, and that will only happen if you are educated about mental health, if you are thinking about it, if you're constantly checking in with yourself, and when you're not feeling okay, you see a professional, and they help you kind of identify early and then help you heal early. That way it won't hopefully
accumulate.
yeah.
And it is a process. Like, you can't expect immediate
100%.
results that I go for one session and I'm gonna be perfect. It is a process, and it's a
100%.
conscious effort that you need to make in your lifestyle, in your thinking, and etc. So
100%. I visited a professional for the first time, let's say 2 years back, and now it's been 1.5 year, 2 years since then, and I'm still, I wouldn't say that I've been healed because it's something, it's something that's accumulated within you for like your entire life, and then suddenly you're trying to unlearn it, you're trying to change your lifestyle, you're trying to change your mind pattern. How will your thought pattern change in like 2 months? Be like, nah, now I'm suddenly a different person. You know, it's not gonna happen like that. So you have to be very patient with yourself, but also others have to be patient with you, because if you're going through something, it's going to affect your relationships. They're going to be worried about you. Like if I get anxious in a situation, the people with me, they are going to be worried about me. And if it constantly happens in different situations, it also takes a toll on them. So you also have to be conscious about how you are, how this is affecting your relationships, how much you communicate to your friends, your family, because it's best to be, I mean,
open
if you
about
can,
it,
try to be, open and transparent. But obviously we know everybody can't have that, because sabka support system to be so like supportive is not true. But I think at least find a few people who understand and who will be patient and supportive with you. And you know, they will also get maybe irritated or mad after a certain point, because they also maybe don't,
they also have their own capacity,
but I feel like have that communication where okay, they may get that, but they also know internally, and they know that it's a process, and you know, they are there by your side no matter how much time it takes.
100%. So you spoke about the problems that you all spoke about during the summit. Did you all speak about solutions and like how to overcome them as well?
Yeah, I think the main solution that I just said is that to identify early, to keep checking in with yourself so that you can identify it early and you can show a professional in time and before things get really like accumulate. So I think that was the solution also that we discussed.
Okay, that's good. I would really like to watch a summit live once, if ever.
Next year. It happens every year, so you can watch it anytime and it's open to everybody.
Right, that's the best part about it, you know, like anyone can access it, which is great.
Yeah, even girl up clubs, like people have this thing because the name is girl up, it is only for girls
only
or
for
something.
Girls, right?
No, but I just want to make that really clear. You can join a girl up club no matter what gender you identify to, no matter what is your sexuality. It's an open space and anyone can be a part of it. Yeah.
So since you spoke about anyone can be a part of it and tapping into the third gender and different orientations, what about their mental health firstly? And secondly, how do we bring equality with them? We can be allies, but then other than that, what are other measures?
So definitely, I mean, trans folk, non-binary folk, I mean, they have their own set of challenges that even if we educate ourselves, we cannot I mean,
empathize
it's very
with
difficult.
them, right?
You definitely should empathize. Yeah, you know, but you definitely should empathize with them, and that empathy will come from education. But I think what I'm trying to say is that there's a lived reality that is experience based, and as an ally also, you have to be aware that you are not going through that lived reality, so you cannot fully say ki, no, I understand your like, you know, I know exactly what you face. You can't know because you don't have that lived experience. Even if, let's say, for me as a woman, a man or a male identifying person can be an ally to me, but he can't to say that, you know, I know all your
No,
challenges. It's not fully possible. So as an ally, I think it's very important to know that, to understand that I stand with you as an ally and I respect you and I treat you as an equal. But I also know there's a lived reality that you go through.
You've experienced,
that I haven't. And so you, I think as an ally, have to educate yourself to the max limit. Engage with diverse people, engage with different people. Get to know them, get to understand them, you know. It's very important to you can read up whatever you want on Google, but the truth is, if you're not engaging, you don't really know. I mean, it's like, you know, I mean, I just always try to fit it in a scenario that I probably understand better. Like if let's say a man were to read everything about a woman on Google, but if you've never interacted with a woman, you don't know them, right? I mean, you don't. So I think really, as allies of anybody, it's very important to educate yourself fully. It's very important to be respectful, and it's very important to have that boundary where you say ki, I understand, I don't have that lived reality experience, and to know more about it, if they're comfortable sharing, to learn and to know, and I guess really be there for, I mean, an ally, you can say, I'm an ally, but to be there for someone when they're going through something, that's when you be an ally. You know, it's not
it's much more than writing ally and a rainbow emoji in your bio.
Yeah, it is definitely that. And it's how you treat, and even in your subconscious, how you see, because we've all been conditioned a certain way. And you're going to have people around you who don't think the same way. But for you to engage and treat equally, and even subconsciously in that zone, to have, to know that they're not different, or they're not people to go against. Everybody is part of the same community. And the more diverse people you interact with, the more exposure you give yourself to different types of people, be it different races, be it different genders, be it different sexualities, different nationalities. It's very important to interact with people who are not like you, because unless you do that, you're not going to see that the world is not just about you. There is a world with different cultures and different communities who do different things. There's so many different communities that we don't even know about. And to just know that there is a world outside your headspace and outside your life is to really acknowledge that. And when you do that, then automatically you will be more open to different kinds of people, because you interact with so many different kinds of people. You accept them for who they are. You don't want them to change or identify to, like, you know, your standards. You respect them for who they are. You may differ, but respect, I think respect is the most important thing. And if we can have that, then I think different people can live together. They can be understanding and loving for each other and caring, because respect is something that says, okay, you and I are different, but okay, I respect you and you respect me, and we can mutually exist. You know,
100%.
If we have that, that is like the goal. That would be like the utopia, where everybody respects other people's choices. You don't have to engage in the same choices, but I mean, you have to understand that, you know, like a person is someone else, and that doesn't make them different.
Right. 100%.
Yeah. And if you are who you are, it's not also about choice. It's like, this is who I am.
This
There's
is
no
why,
choice or no choice.
Yeah.
This is who I am. And to change someone is just, it's like, why? Because if we are all the same, if we're all going to be homogenous, what's going to be the point of anything? You have to interact with different people of different, even normally different taste, different music, different, I mean, I'm not even going into genders and nationalities.
Even the small things.
It's very important. Yeah.
Just exposing, and that's how your personality also builds, I would say.
Yeah, and open-mindedness. It's so important. Like, I can't emphasize it. To be open-minded towards different information that you're getting from the world. It's so important to be open-minded and have a reflective filter, and then take in what you want. But to be open enough to at least receive it. It's like we don't even want to receive it. We just block pehle. At least pehle receive kar lo, sun lo, samajh lo, and then whatever you decide it's on, that's your personal choice.
That's yours.
Can't really say anything. Yeah.
Right. But the first step is at least to listen, that patience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so when it comes to sex workers, majority of them are underprivileged and marginalized women, and they always live a life of disrespect and shame. So how can we destigmatize that in society, since no work is big or small, and even sex work is work that deserves respect? Since you spoke about respect, I'd like to bring that topic up.
Yeah, I think again that is a topic that is, even to talk about it is very stigmatized. There is no place to talk or to discuss or to interact. I mean, we are told, oh, don't interact with them, or it's just us them. That
again,
us
it's
them
like
dynamic.
A different class. I wouldn't even say class. It's just like you're different. You exist differently.
Yeah,
we
and
exist.
that happens with everything. Like we've been conditioned that way for different sexualities, for different nationalities. It's just that nahi, us and them. But again, first thing that comes is open-mindedness, and to bring the stories out. I mean, we don't even give people a platform to speak. We just assume and we shut ourselves off. So I think it's very important to at least have a platform, at least voice, and not for others to voice for them. Like, sometimes people want to bring their voices, so they will voice for them, but for them to voice for themselves. I mean, that kind of a platform.
There's a thin line of a difference. Yes.
Again, same thing. You can be an ally, you can support, you can help provide platforms, you can support, but for them to speak for themselves, that this is what we want. I mean, that's very important. Like, let's say if I were to like go somewhere, or let's say I were to talk about women's rights or something, I would rather we talk about it, or different women from different diverse backgrounds talk about it, right? So similarly, I think for people to voice for themselves rather than for other people to voice. And I'm not saying other people should just be like shut off. Again, same thing, you can be an ally, you can support, you can provide your full support, but again, you have to acknowledge that there is a lived reality that I cannot speak for. Even I can't speak for a lived reality of a person who identifies as a non-binary person. I don't have that lived experience, so it's better if we hear it from them, right? So that I think is I think, again, going back to the idea of storytelling, the stories have to be told by the people whose story it is. That 100%. That I think will bring a kind of authenticity and an opinion that comes from a lived reality, and then we can stand as an ally with them. But first, for them to for people to speak for themselves. It's so important for other people to not speak for them. They first should listen, understand, help provide those platforms, use their privilege to provide those platforms, but then the voice should not be you for someone else. It should be them for themselves.
That's very well said. That's very well. So how do you want Girl Up Bombay to grow as an organization in the near future?
So I think Girl Up Bombay is really close to me. It's close to everyone who's a part of it. So I think I really wanted to grow, for the community to grow in terms of more people being attached to it, more people working with it. That's why we have also opened up the volunteering positions now. So you can apply to be a volunteer at Girl Up Bombay. You can go to our Instagram page and you'll find the form over there, which you can link as we can link it. And so we just want, and because it's not a paid position, we're not hiring. This is a fully volunteer based thing, and we understand people do have time constraints, etc. But I think what we really want to do here, our vision, our goal is to build a community of people from different backgrounds, and no matter who you are, what you identify with, to come and build a community of people that really want this entire world, or starting from Bombay, to be an equal community and to be a safe place and be a safe space. And it's a place where we can communicate, interact. We also have lots of fun. It's a place where I have made some of the most amazing friendships without even having met them physically. Yeah, not like a lot of us haven't even met each other physically, but we're so close. It is insane how friendships can form even through the digital medium, you know. 100%. So I think the point is to build a community. The point is to build a group of young people who come together for something they all truly believe in. Because Girl Up also has an age bracket of, I think, 13, 14 to 22. So that's the age where you can be a part of a Girl Up club. So you will interact with other young people in your same community. You know, it doesn't have to be Bombay. If you're, let's say if you're based in Delhi, there's so many clubs in Delhi. And if you are in a place where you don't see you have a club, you can make your own club. You just have to go to the Girl Up community page and download the community app and go on it, and you can make your own club. And there's so many helpful people that can guide you through it. And then once you're part of a club, you can be a part of the coalition of that region. So let's say a person who's a part of Girl Up Bombay can then choose to join the Girl Up Maharashtra coalition, where it works regionally. And then from that region comes Girl Up India, which is the nationwide thing. And then there's the Girl Up campaign, which is the worldwide thing. So it's like, you can be a part of a club no matter where you are, or you can start your own club. It's really based on how much initiative you want to take. And if you want to take that initiative, you have a community of people that will come and support you in every way and form.
This structure is very, very, I have no words. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, it's just because what happens as a global campaign is that a club sitting in India can directly connect to a club in Brazil, and then a club in Argentina, a club in like South Africa. There's so many different places where these clubs are. Some places are more clubs, some places less clubs, and we all come on that same app and community platform where we can engage with each other no matter which part of the world
you are in. That sense of connectivity accelerates everything, right?
100%. Like Girl Up Bombay did a webinar which was in collaboration with Girl Up Edinburgh, and we did that webinar where we discussed the impact that COVID-19 had on women. And that webinar was in collaboration, so it was really nice to have another Girl Up chapter and like to connect with them and really, and it was a part of a series that Girl Up Edinburgh was doing, and so it was really interesting, you know, to bring different cultures and regions together and discuss. I think that was that's been a great experience to connect with so many people from the world. Like I know so many different people from like so many different parts that it really as you talked about it exposes you to different kinds of people.
So and there is that sense of belonging at the same time, which is beautiful.
Exactly, because you're part of the same organization, you're part of the same movement. So if someone's looking for exposure to the world and really build a global community, or if someone is really passionate about gender equality, then Girl Up will give them that platform. And the amount of initiative you take, it is recognized. And you do feel like you belong somewhere, you know, like at least that's what happened with me, and that's why I continue to do it, because it's something where I feel like, okay, this place I'll come, it's a safe space where I know I belong.
If anyone's listening and watching to this, you have to enroll with Girl Up. I can see, Devi, when you're speaking about it, you're so passionate and like your whole face lights up, which is like that's good to have that kind of a relation with an organization and a community. So I can do it. Also 24th September, it's on Insider. I will link it down in the description.
Yep, everybody come watch a live performance.
Done.
Thespo is a great place as well. It's a great organization, so definitely come watch their plays. And they keep doing like play readings and play you can listen to plays together as a community. So if anyone's interested in theater, Thespo is a great place to be. So come watch our performance on the 24th and 25th. Yeah.
Thank you
You
so
can buy
much.
your tickets.
I really enjoyed, and it was a good conversation in a long time. You really resonated with so many points that you said. It's good to have someone our age, like, speak about this. I'm sure the audience is gonna love this episode.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was amazing being here. It was a great conversation. It didn't even feel
Right.
like, a formal thing. It felt
Yeah.
really nice, and you were a great host. You made me feel
Thank
really
you.
comfortable. So it was amazing.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching. It's Asmin, your host. If you like this, go ahead and give us a big thumbs up, subscribe, hit on the bell icon to get notified for future podcast episodes, and comment what you learned from this one. Share it with someone so we all learn, grow, and evolve together.